So we're back for episode 2 of Council Briefs. Today I'm sitting down with Mayor Morgan to talk about some of the items that were in front of our last council meeting and stuff that he's been working on personally as well. Josh, we're a little bit late. The council meeting was actually a week ago, but you were away. Things have been very, very busy. So thankfully we were able to get our volunteers in today to help get this second episode ready. I have been filling in for you a bit in the acting mayor role because you've had to make some trips to Toronto and then to Ottawa, and I wondered if you might want to share with people why you've been away. And I guess maybe let's start with Toronto and your visit to meet with the Premier and members of the government.
Yeah, so as you know, in my State of the City speech, we made housing and homelessness and health really 3 key priorities for the city. And so my meetings were basically to go and engage on those. As I mentioned, as we build our health and homelessness system out, there's things that the city can do, but there's things that other levels of government are going to have to be responsible for and assist us with. And so you don't get that just by sitting around and hoping it happens. You've got to go, meet with the key players, have the discussions, outline the case, and that's what I did. So I had a good chance to meet with the Premier and members of his cabinet, not all members, but a good handful of key members of the cabinet related to the health and homelessness file. Really great, productive meeting. You don't usually come out of there with a suitcase full of money or anything like that. It's groundwork that you lay, and then there's a lot of follow-ups by staff and follow-ups with relevant ministers after the fact. But I would say it was an exceptionally positive meeting, great engagement with the Premier and the key ministers, and really productive on behalf of the city, I think.
Well, and I know you didn't come home with a big bag of money from your trip to Toronto, but I was giving you a little bit of a ribbing about chairing an 18-minute meeting while you were away. We only had one item on that agenda, so it was a very quick meeting to chair. And you cleverly shot back, but yes, while I chaired a meeting in 18 minutes, you came back with an extra $8 million.
Yes.
I know that wasn't
Yes.
directly a result of sitting down
Yes.
with the cabinet, but
Yeah.
what was that $8 million in investment from the
Yeah,
province for?
in the provincial budget, they announced an expansion of the funding for homelessness initiatives across the province under something called the Homelessness Prevention Program. London's share of that increase was a 60% increase to the funding we get, which is about an $8 million amount. That brings the total money that we get in that program up just over 20 million total. So it was a nice jump in that envelope of funding, but overall we've got some money to work with, which really helps us get our new hubs and supportive housing system underway this fall. The work has been ongoing. Implementation tables and governance is being worked on now, but we'll be ready to go and deploy that money very shortly and very soon in partnership with the key partners who are going to make it happen across the city. So it was great news from the province to receive that level of increase. It's not going to get us all the way to where we need to be, but it certainly helps us get started on this initiative for sure.
And you also made a trip to Ottawa to meet with some members of the federal government, and I think you met with some opposition members as well while you were there. So what inspired that trip, or what was the impetus of that meeting?
Yeah, so between those 2 trips, I actually met with the Prime Minister here in London to talk about the same issues. But then I traveled to Ottawa just this past week to meet with key federal ministers, and that was great because we got to meet with all the key ministers relevant to our health and homelessness file. Now at the federal level, it's a little bit different in that we're really talking about the housing and supportive housing side of things. So we're really talking about capital dollars to assist the city in building that supportive housing. So that means ministers of intergovernmental affairs and infrastructure, housing, health, talking to them about the work that we're doing. And I would say, again, really, really productive meetings. And I should also say, for both the meetings in the province, with the province of Ontario and the federal government, I do need to thank our local MPPs and MPs for their assistance in setting this up. So MPP Rob Flack and Minister Monty McNaughton were really critical to making that meeting with the Premier and Cabinet happen. And MP Kayabaga and MP Fragiscatos really helpful in setting up and making the meetings in Ottawa possible this past week. So I thank them not only for their advocacy on behalf of the city, but also for assisting us in our efforts to get in front of key players to make our case.
So you touched on this, and we have both said it many times, both publicly and in individual meetings with people, the city will do everything it can, but we cannot solve the housing crisis or the homelessness crisis. And the two are related, but they're not exactly the same. We can't do it all alone. We do need our senior levels of government doing their part too. You touched on the transitional supportive housing. And I think that that's something we should just highlight for a minute. What's the difference between affordable housing
Yeah.
and transitional or supportive housing?
Yeah, so if you think about our housing needs as a spectrum, we need some of everything, but there are some areas where we have some gaps. So we have market rate housing, which is what you'd go out and find in the listings. Then we've got some slightly below market rate housing, whether that's at the 80% or 75% range, that was done mainly through different programs that we had access to over the years, like bonusing and others. Below that, you get into the builds that the city would be involved in, like Division Soho partnerships, where you're trying to target that deeply affordable rent in the maybe $500 to $800, $900 range to try to drive some affordability. But then there's an element of housing where you might need supports. So not just a place to live, but if you've got addiction challenges or mental health issues or other challenges that need supports, supportive housing, which is housing with wraparound service supports, agencies and professionals in those healthcare and supportive service spaces who are right in the buildings and providing supports to those units. Under that, you've got RGI housing, so rent geared towards income. So basically you pay what you can afford, and that's mainly done by our housing corporation, London Middlesex Community Housing. So when we talk about our health and homelessness plan, we're creating low barrier hubs, and what that feeds into is really the supportive housing piece. We have 2,000 people who are on our list of homelessness in the city. About 600 of those are high needs, high acuity individuals who will need supportive housing. So we can't just take them and put them into a housing unit. They're going to require some level of supports to be successful, or they're just going to end up right back on the street, which doesn't help anybody in the situation. Huge draw on resources, not helping them get to the next stage in their life, and just not something that's functional. So that investment in supportive housing is really critical to the long-term success, and really take the pressure off of a number of services, whether that's police, whether that's land ambulance, emergency rooms through offload delays, or even the pressure on our downtown businesses and those who are dealing with the impacts of having a large population of homeless in our city.
And I think that's really important for people to understand. You know, it's almost like a ladder, and people who are experiencing homelessness are often on that bottom rung of the ladder. But there are folks higher up the ladder who, if they just had a discount on market rent, they might be working, they might be holding down a full-time job, but they just can't afford market rent. And so they need units. And then there's the people who are on disability who need units that are barrier-free in terms of mobility issues.
Right.
So there's this whole thing that we have to do. And that's why there's not one magic wand to fix this problem, right? It's going to take a whole bunch of different pieces, and we're working on putting that puzzle together.
Yeah, well, something you said is really critical, and that's we're going to do what we need to on all of those pieces of housing in the city. In some cases, we can't do it on our own. We're going to need financial supports from other levels of government. But it's also not a problem we can solve on our own. So even if we got all the financial supports that we needed, if we got all of the resources into the system, and if we built it out completely, it's not an issue that can be solved just within the geographic boundaries of the City of London as a whole, which is why in our discussions with the province and the federal governments, I'm also working on, this is a plan that is scalable. It's something that can be applied in other cities and should be applied in other cities. I'm also working through the Ontario...
Because London might need 15 hubs. I know that's the number that we've talked about. But a community, say St. Thomas or a Chatham, might only need 2 or 3.
Exactly.
So you can scale that up and down to fit.
So the Ontario Big City Mayors are also working on this. That's the 29 largest municipalities in the province of Ontario. Mayor Patterson from Kingston and I have taken a lead within that organization on the health and homelessness initiative. And we've carved out a position that really does mirror the work that's being done here in London and similar work being done in Kingston as a model to take to the provincial government on behalf of all cities in Ontario. And we're working closely with AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, but those big city mayors are working together to say, London might be 1 or 2 steps down the road on this, but we all need to get there eventually, and so this is something that we have to solve together.
So, of course, none of this comes without a price tag.
Right.
We've mentioned that already. And obviously, it's the biggest issue on the minds of our constituents, and it's the #1 issue in London. But so too is affordability for families in general. And I know we said council briefs, and I know we're talking a little bit longer than last episode today, but I think it's really important because one of the other things we dealt with at the last council was setting a target range for the next multi-year budget.
Yep.
And we did ultimately pretty much land right back where we started at the beginning of the debate. So staff have said to us, 2.9% to 3.9% is going to be the range to keep things stable, services as they are.
Yes.
And there's a reason why that number is not quite as precise as it's been in past years. We've got financial implications from Bill 23. We've got inflationary pressures. We have, even in some of our services, we've got material supply chain issues.
Yep.
There's all kinds of things that are some question marks for us right now. So we've got a range. You suggested that we allocate an extra 0.5% to some new investments for the strategic plan development. So I just wanted to ask you to share with people who are watching what the goal is in setting that tax target. What's the value? Because we're not dealing with the budget yet, so why are we setting a target?
Yeah, so the target setting exercise is really important for our staff because our staff have to craft a budget that we can work from. That means we can add, we can remove, but we need a basis to work from. And so the target range and the way we've structured it will give us a basis to say, bring us a budget that's generally within this range, give us options to get within there. But we did 2 things in this target setting. We carved out to say we're going to do at least a 0.5% of initiatives on our new strategic plan. So we didn't just go through that process for nothing. We're actually going to put some financial resources behind it. Now we can do more than that because what staff will do is they'll come back with the budget and then they'll say these are our 4 recommended investments to achieve some of your strategic plan. And then they'll give us another set of initiatives that said these are for consideration. And so what council will be able to do through engaging with the public is start to mix and match those. You may say, guess what? We actually don't think some of these are recommended. We're going to take them out. We think some of these for considerations should go in, and we'll work through the budget process and land at an ultimate tax rate through council's decision making and really important engagement with the public. So what the public will see in the fall is a series of business cases. And again, the target setting allows our staff to know this is the range that we need to set some business cases around. This is the range that we need to bring the options forward to, knowing that council might add or subtract from that. And once those business cases are out, some really important engagement has to happen with the public. I know ward councillors will go out across the city into their constituencies and talk with individuals, and I know lots of Londoners will want to give their feedback directly into the city as well. So we're really at the very, very start of this process. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to the target range as being where we land, because what we'll have by the time the budget is finalized is a much clearer sense on what it's going to cost. Some of those
blanks are going to get filled in for us before the budget.
What it's going to cost to maintain services, we'll know about that number, and then we'll have better costing on all of the strategic initiatives because those are all estimates as well. So we'll have actual data, actual information, and then of course we have a 4-year budget, so the pacing and timing of when we do what is structured into this plan as well. We may have great ideas that we really want to pursue, but fiscally we just don't have the capacity to get there, so we may start some initiatives in year 3 and 4 just to make sure we spread out the costs and not put too much of a burden on taxpayers in the city.
Well, when we do the engagement in Ward 2, I'll hopefully be able to do that at East Lyons if I can get a room, and maybe you can come out and join us and bring the kids for a swim while you're talking city budget, and I'll go for a swim with the kids and have some fun, and you can talk about the budget piece. But I do want to wrap up on something that's a little bit of fun. I see there's a new souvenir that has arrived in your office this week.
Yep.
So,
yep, the Knights are playing the Sting this week, so I had to get ready. Mayor Bradley's been chirping me, so I've got my my new jersey. I had a jersey, but I wanted to get it updated, so I even put my name on it, and of course I'm the 65th mayor of London, so put the old 65 on the back, and I'll be wearing this and cheering the Knights on. You know, at the time of the recording of the video, we're up 2-1.
Yep.
So it's looking good, and we just got to get it home.
Well, I got a black version with a 2 on the back for Ward 2. So if either one of us stumbles across a pair of tickets, we can go and be a matching set for the next home game, perhaps. That's all we're going to talk about this week. Hope you got a little bit more insight on what we're talking about and debating at council at our last meeting, and what the mayor's been up to while he's been away from council. And we'll be back with another episode of Council Briefs after our next council meeting. We're going to rotate through councillors as we do these, so there'll be some new faces at the next episode, and we'll be talking about the big issues that were on the agenda. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank you.